is up, Internet? What is going on? Welcome to the only podcast about movies. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I'm Shahir Dowd.
And today, Shahir, what are we talking about?
We're doing Jurassic World.
Roar.
Hey, and before we go on, there were a couple other films that we wanted to check out this week. A couple of smaller indie films, because Jurassic World is a major... It's like the biggest... Friday opening in history, apparently.
Yeah, but like there's all these stipulations. Whenever a film does something like this, it's like, oh, it's the biggest Friday opening in June on an odd numbered day and with a Thursday opening of it's like it's whatever. I don't care about those numbers.
Either way, it made oh my god. Is this
Well, that's projections. They're not done telling what the weekend tally is. They don't even know what the Friday tally is. This is Sunday morning, by the way. Hi, we're not actually going to be drinking alcohol or being really tired. So, yeah.
Either way, currently, Box Office Mojo's weekend estimates is $204 million.
God bless.
So the other movie I wanted to mention out, which I didn't get a chance to see, but I've heard amazing things about, is Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, which won 2 major awards at Sundance this year, and the trailer looks amazing. So hopefully, we'll get to talk about that film at some point.
Maybe if I get over the shell shock of a pigeon.
Yeah.
No, I gotta see. Obviously. Yeah, man. So we went and saw Jurassic World. We woke up bright and early, and we saw a 10 a.m. showing. And Shahir, what initial thoughts? What did you overall feel about the movie?
Well, let's back up a second and just talk about let's just talk about Jurassic Park for a second.
The original Jurassic Park.
We all have memories of seeing Jurassic Park, right? Like unless we're like either really young, which is very possible, or very, very old.
Right.
We're somewhere in the middle. Like Jurassic Park to me was a magical moment in the theater.
Right.
Like, when you were a kid, there was all this marketing hype. Everything was like about Jurassic Park, dinosaurs on screen. I remember I actually saw it on a bootleg VHS tape first.
Okay.
And then my science class in New Zealand decided to take a group trip to see Jurassic Park. That's how important the film was.
Right.
Like, as a science class, we went to see it. And it was a fun trip. So I have, particularly fond memories of Jurassic Park. And I think Jurassic Park is one of those few films, like Terminator 2, which I've already talked about as one of my, all-time favorite actions, really holds up.
Yeah, I watched it 3 weeks ago, as I do.
And there's still magic in that film,
yeah.
right? Like,
oh, yeah.
When you watch that film, there's magic in that film.
And there's magic beyond nostalgia. There's a lot of films I can watch, like Masters of the Universe, for instance.
I remember that film, yeah.
Yeah, so...
I remember we won't have to lock our doors.
Thanks, Gwildor. No, and like that's one of those movies where I totally understand, like, if I showed that to a kid today, they'd be like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. But like, because I love it and the nostalgia factor, and I loved it when I saw it, I love that movie. Jurassic Park is one of those movies that I truly feel like you could show a child.
Yeah, and it would hold up, and they would love it.
And even after this, even if you took a kid to Jurassic World and you say, hey, you want to see what happened beforehand? And they'd be like, what? You could show them the original Jurassic Park and it would still hold up, and I think it would still hold their interest.
So the reason I wanted to mention that is that even in the marketing push for this film, Jurassic World, I felt like there was a distinct lack of magic about it. Like it didn't feel to me now, and I think there are reasons for that I want to point out, but it didn't feel to me like we were entering the same realm of wonder. Like there was like, oh my god, these dinosaurs. And it might just be the fact that this is the 4th film in a series. The other film was 1992. So that's like 18 years ago, if not my math. No, it's even more. Jesus.
In the words of the immortal John Cusack in the film Grosse Pointe Blank, you can never go home again.
Yeah.
But apparently you can shop there. Yeah. Jurassic World, this is what I think the answer to this thing. They wanted to try to do the magic approach, but I don't think the timing and the cast and crew and everything they have behind it, other than Chris Pratt, is capable of doing that sort of level of magic. Yeah. For instance, the advertising was all like the slow build, then the title comes up, the park is open, and then you see that swooping shot of the park. But the difference, I think, too, is this. Back then, the idea of a theme park that's not open, that's going to open, and that might even be true, is really exciting and it's magical and things you don't know they're testing and it could go or whatever. This is a fully functioning business that in this film's own, even in the trailer it says this, of its own sort of story building, like, oh man, people are getting bored of it. Like, it's become commonplace. Like, there's a little exposition in the beginning about that. And it's kind of sort of a nice meta comment on films sort of in general, if you want to take it that way, because we've seen it all. I mean, so far it feels that way, and every time, I know that's not true, but every time you see something that you haven't seen before, you haven't experienced before, it's becoming, for me, fewer and far between moments. Maybe that's getting older, maybe it's because cinema's taken off so much and so many more people are making movies and trying things even on the internet and blah blah blah. So that level of magic, and you can use the definition of magic however you want, listeners.
Cinema magic.
Yeah, cinema magic, I don't think is as commonplace, and I don't think in a franchise in its fourth movie is going to be able to do that. And I'll even say this, because again, what's it? We've been talking for maybe 6 minutes. I'm going to mention the Avengers. I don't think, and not that I'm not going to dislike any of the future Marvel movies, but I think Age of Ultron proved to me that there won't be another Marvel movie in this current sort of universe thing that is going to give me that sort of cinematic magic like the first Avengers did. Like, they did it, and it was amazing because I'd never seen it or experienced it. Same with Jurassic Park. Yeah. That's just sort of where this movie lies, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. But I think in a franchise like Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, you kind of live and die by your reverence for the first movie.
And like, I think one of the things that the director Colin Trevorrow, I think his name is.
We're real good with names.
Yeah, we are. Well, someone pointed that out on Reddit this week.
Good. Good. Keep calling us out, and we'll keep being ignorant.
Was that the image that he loved was this idea of this huge dinosaur in front of a kid who's holding and looking at a cell phone. And that was his idea of, like, that was his pitch for the movie.
Yeah.
Which I think is an interesting pitch for the movie. Well, I just don't think that the film kind of like takes that idea and travels with it in any direction.
No.
It just kind of like lays it at the beginning, and then that's about it.
What it kind of does, and this is something I wanted to talk about, and this I don't think is spoiling anything yet. It's so there's obviously two kids in the movie. You see them in the trailer, and they're trying to redo, again, the moment of the kids in the park. And there's a magical moment of these kids that love dinosaurs seeing dinosaurs for the first time. And this one, there's one kid that loves dinosaurs, and you can kind of glean this from the trailer. Like, the older kid is like, I'm too cool for anything, and blah, blah, blah. And that's very true. You saw glimpses of that moment of a dinosaur and a cell phone, right?
Yeah.
But all it did, and for me, is the beginning sets that up, and I'm like, okay, I get it. Kids are kind of shitty. But then it's also sort of like, is this what everyone thinks kids are? Like, and I've dealt with some kids that are very much like that, and I've dealt with other kids that are people. There's this wide variety of shit. And I feel like this is a very sort of mainstream media, this is what kids do. They're checking their social media, and they're doing this, and we focus grouped that. So maybe that they're, like, it's just all this, like, whatever. Where I do feel like you can still, it's a cynical look at youth. In a weird way. And that's an approach, and if they kept hammering that, or at least tried to do it more eloquently than they did in the film, rather than just, like, give you one or two brief moments of that, and then all of a sudden, character transformation. Yeah. Like, that would be something, but it didn't really do that. So I think that was a great sort of way to start out, but they never really bought into it, and they took it a much more corporate, this is what kids are like, rather than a statement of, kids are like this because this, and maybe we could do this to make them less like that. Like, there's no heart behind that.
Yeah, there's definitely a cynical approach to the way that they treat kids in this film, and it's something that Spielberg, even though his films are broad strokes about human emotions,
right.
Like they're really, really broad in terms of like who people are. There's no cynicism to the way he does things, and there's just a slight sort of manufactured cynicism to this.
There's
film.
a ton of cynicism in this film. Well, the director, I'm sorry, butcher his name again.
Colin Trevorrow.
Oh God, we should look that up.
I have it in front of me. I
can't pronounce it.
Trevorrow.
He did what? He did Safety Not Guaranteed.
Safety Not Guaranteed.
I love Safety Not Guaranteed.
Right.
I love it. I saw it. I bought it. I'm a fan of that movie. But you know what that movie is? Cynical. It's hugely cynical.
Now, Spielberg talked about the reason why they chose Colin Trevorrow, because Safety Not Guaranteed was his first film, and doesn't the uproar about Jurassic World was that you didn't think that safety not guaranteed suggested Jurassic World.
Sure.
And I don't think that's true. But the reason why Spielberg chose Safety Not Guaranteed, chose Colin Trevorrow was because of the final scene in Safety Not Guaranteed.
Yeah, which is a very Spielberg-esque sort of scene.
It's a Spielberg-esque sort of scene, and it's also not a cynical moment. It's a moment of pure movie.
It's the only non-cynical moment in that entire movie.
It's a very, and I like that moment.
Sure.
I don't love the film. I think it's a good moment in an okay film.
Right.
So. And then the other way to think about Jurassic Park as well in terms of that magic is that Jurassic Park was a perfect convergence of technology and storytelling.
Yep.
This was a movie about reviving dinosaurs through new technology.
Yeah.
And the film was like it wasn't the first film that used CGI, but it was certainly one of the early adopters and certainly one of the early high watermarks. So there was this perfect conversion. People wanted to go see this because it was like, oh my God, are they going to put dinosaurs on screen that aren't going to be puppets? Because the previous iterations of that was like,
or claymation, or they were even talking about doing claymation for the original. That fell through, obviously.
Yeah, stop motion, claymation, puppeteering. And so, Jurassic Park had like these amazing CGI set pieces, which hadn't been seen before. And the thing about them is like now in most modern films, we use CGI to destroy things. And in Jurassic Park, the CGI, although eventually led to destruction, the first 45 minutes of that film are CGI wonders. Like it's just like, oh my God, look at this dinosaur. It's living, it's breathing, it feels real. Like they're looking at it. Yeah. And it's funny, I watch it and there's some bad rotoscoping in that original film, but there's still like this sense of wonder to those dinosaurs.
You know what I find funny? So first of all, let me just say the visuals and the CGI and all the special effects of this movie are fantastic.
Yeah, they're very good.
The only problem I had, and it's funny, whenever a film opens this is a minor spoiler, but whenever the film opens before the title on dinosaur eggs hatching, it's CG, dinosaur eggs hatching. That whole thing is CG. It's very clear. Whenever a film does that for me, when it's an opening shot of CG that's not meant to be like artsy or spectacle or like whatever, it's like, oh, this is a thing that's supposed to look real in this world.
Yeah.
I instantly go, oh, it's a CG movie. Like I instantly go, and there's a little bit of heart chipped away from it. I don't know why that is in me.
Think about the analogous scene in Jurassic Park. And I'm going to go back to Jurassic Park the whole way through this
why
discussion.
wouldn't you? It's amazing.
But think about the analogous scene in Jurassic Park, which is when you saw the Velociraptor hatching in Jurassic Park, which was all puppeteering.
Yep.
And it came in a moment in the middle of the film, and it was like this sort of odd minutiae about dinosaurs. And there was this sort of underlying thing, which is that should they have hatched this dinosaur, you're breeding, Sam Neill's character Alan Grant actually says you bred raptors, and it's and like that moment has all this sort of ramifications for this movie as well, because it's about imprinting as well, which Chris Pratt talks about later on. So there was this kind of amazing wonderment to Jurassic Park that just seems not to be there in this film. Now that's not to say, for me, this film Jurassic World actually opened pretty strongly. Like I was kind of in it, and I kind of felt that they were true to Jurassic Park, but also managing to kind of use it in its own way. And, so I was kind of on board for maybe the first 30 minutes of this film.
Right.
And, I was kind of like, okay, I think they're doing something interesting here. It feels like its own thing, but at the same time still using Spielberg's look and style. But then...
Dun dun dun.
Okay, but then...
Well, see, now you can glean, listener, that Shahir started to have some issues. I thought the beginning of the movie was worse. I think the first third of the movie is worse than the rest of the movie, which is the opposite, I think, of what you think.
Yeah, for me, the first third of the movie was bearable and like not terrible. And like for a Jurassic Park reboot of a franchise, not reboot, but continuation of a franchise, I was kind of like on board. I didn't think, I thought the setup was okay. It was perfectly acceptable to me.
Everything was so cliche. Think about this. And now, can we start talking about spoilers a little bit, or do you want to talk about something else?
For listeners, why don't we give, so that listeners can actually kind of like either go and watch the movie at this point. Let's do like a general impression and then like start getting into spoilers.
I think overall, yes, you absolutely should see this movie. I think it's a fun summer thing. I also think it's not better than the original, but basically 99.6% of films aren't better than the original Jurassic Park, and I go see those all the time. Chris Pratt is great. The moments with the Velociraptors are just as cool as you think they are. The action is really well done, I think. And the score is exactly the same as what you love. So you really can't go wrong a lot. If you're going to nitpick it, and we will nitpick it, you can, but you should go see it. It's very fun. I think adults and children will enjoy it.
I would say don't go see it.
What?
I would say rent Jurassic Park instead, and if you're going to go see the fourth movie of a franchise right now, go see Mad Max. You know, I don't.
You're really going to tell people not to see Jurassic World?
I don't think there's much in it for anyone.
Wow!
I'm when I go home, I'm not going to tell my wife to go see, you should come see Jurassic World. I'm not going to tell kids you should go see Jurassic World. I'm going to say, watch Jurassic Park instead. You're going to have a better time. It's a better movie. I think Jurassic Park to me, all Jurassic World offers is bombast. And the only thing for me that's holding the film together, and I wrote this down in my notes as well, this film would be a complete this film would be a complete failure if it wasn't for Chris Pratt's presence, and even he can't save the last third of this movie. I will say Colin Trevorrow, for all intents and purposes, does a fairly reasonable job. There's no, like the qualms that I had about could a guy who did Safety Not Guaranteed jump over to Jurassic World, he seems to handle it pretty well. I don't think there's any problem there. I just think overall the film doesn't really have much to offer, especially and we're going to get into it here, but beyond the first act and maybe a little bit of the second act, this film just in my mind, I'm going to rename it Jurassic World: The Island of Increasing Stupidity.
Okay, that's half of every movie plot.
Well, in this film, more so than.
But
most.
let me say this: you, my friend, much like most of your life, with this film, going to see it or not, are living on a plane of existence of only absolutes. Okay, you're basically saying, don't see this one movie, but watch this one movie. Don't see Jurassic World, but go watch Jurassic Park again. Guess what, listeners? You can do both. You can see both movies, and you should. And you know what? Go see Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, too, because I still think those are fun. They have fun moments in them, too, and I'm glad they exist.
Here's where my absolute starts and finishes. If you have $15 to spend, don't spend it on Jurassic World.
Wow. I'd say do spend it on Jurassic World, but there's also... How do I put it sort of this way? It's like I'm just going to be reiterating what I said, so we should probably move on. But it's not as good as the first one. It's still a great summer movie, and I think the masses will enjoy it.
The furthest I will go with it is that it's not a terrible movie, but it's not worth your time.
Okay, disagree.
It's not a terrible movie in any way, shape, or form, but it really is not worth your time.
Okay. Well, actually, let's kind of go into. What was I saying before this?
So we're going to go into spoilers right now. So we're going to really start nitpicking why I think this film doesn't really work beyond the first half of it.
And I'm going to tell you why I think the first third of it does not work at all, and then kind of picks up and lets you have fun with it.
Yeah, but I could see.
Hold on. Yeah, that's not booze. That's actually just soda because it's early on Sunday afternoon.
I could see why the first third of it could be seen as cliche. It basically sets up two kids who are gonna, have some kind of bonding experience at the park, and then it sets up that kind of Spielbergian cliche of parents potentially divorcing and having their, and how that's going to impact these kids. So I could kind of see that they don't play on to that too much, but ultimately the reason why Jurassic Park also worlds, it's this thing that Spielberg does, and I think it's one of the things that in the hands of many other filmmakers can come off as terrible, but Spielberg does it well. I think one thing that I heard a quote recently, which I think perfectly summarizes why Spielberg is great. Spielberg is like everything you're taught at film school being pulled off correctly, but like in the hands of lesser filmmakers, they're not. They don't work. He is the textbook for what is taught at film school.
Well, here's the reason. Okay, you talked about the island of stupidity, right?
Yeah, but okay, yeah, go.
So the island of stupidity, Jurassic Park has that stuff too, but Spielberg manages to make it into character traits and important plot points. Nedry, it being Nedry, getting so far and then messing up. Hell, there's even a slapstick moment in the original Jurassic Park when Nedry slips and it goes, and you hear a sound effect of whew!
Yeah.
Like, okay, so people are making stupid decisions in the park.
They're making stupid decisions, but he indicates up front that these particular people are stupid people.
Right. No, I'm saying they're very character driven. In Jurassic World, a lot of people just make stupid, but a lot of people make mistakes. But it also sets up it sets up everyone as stupid.
Yeah.
Now, everyone in the original Jurassic Park is not stupid. In this movie, and we'll get into Bryce Dallas Howard and even Vincent D'Onofrio, who I completely forgot was in this film till halfway through watching his character, and I was like, oh, it's the Kingpin. I'm like, this is fantastic.
Or Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, whatever. But the crux of it is in the beginning of this, they set up all that stuff. They set up all the Spielberg framework, and they do the nonsense of like getting the kids with the divorced parents, or they're getting divorced or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Does the divorce matter? No. Does the divorce help the kids in the later part of the movie like bond together? Not really.
And here's the most important part is I hate these kids in this movie.
The kids, so the two kids in the movie kind of, again, are these, I feel like executive producers. No. I feel like the executive producers watched some episodes of The Parenthood and then watched a bunch of One Direction music videos and thought, okay, this little kid is going to have a tinge of some sort of mental disability where he's really, really smart and he remembers a bunch of stuff, but he's super hyper and can't be controlled and da-da-da-da. And his older cool brother is just interested in chicks, man, and doesn't give a fuck about dinosaurs or bullshit or their parents or their aunts.
Even as dinosaurs are killing people in front of them, he seems indifferent to the whole.
He does not give a shit.
Yeah.
And then they have like their little moment, like every moment of theirs doesn't feel earned. In fact, that's a criticism of this entire film, I'll say. No moment in this film feels earned, other than standing on the backs of giants from the previous films.
Yeah.
There's one moment that feels earned.
Yeah.
Are you ready for this?
Which one?
This is a spoiler.
We're in spoiler territory now.
There's a moment in this movie where a character in the control room goes to do the ridiculous kiss to another female. A male goes to kiss a female character, like, because he's staying behind to take control, whatever. And the girl stops him and is like, whoa, I have a boyfriend. And he's like, oh, you never talk about it. It's like, she's like, yeah, I'm at work. And that's basically like, it's really, really, really cool to see that, especially because earlier in the film, there's a ridiculous moment exactly like that with Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, where there's just kiss out of nowhere.
Yeah. It's Jake Johnson from The New Girl who has that moment.
Yeah.
And it's like, it is a good moment because it plays off your expectations and reverts and subverts them and does it in a smart and funny way.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably, arguably, it's the best moment in the film.
I smiled the most at that moment, and it was just, but then, oh man, like then you got to think, okay, so there's this one moment of honesty and this one moment of like really sort of like true. I don't
know if it's honest, but it's fun.
It's fun. There's a fun moment. Let's call it that. But it's fun and playful off of basically making fun of your own movie. Like you just did this thing that you're mocking 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And it was fine then in your context.
Yeah.
That's just how it's just a little bit nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy. It doesn't I mean, that moment works, but it also reminds me of, you know, and this might be a slightly bold statement about Jurassic Park, but to me, the best special effects in Jurassic Park are Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, and Richard Attenborough. They are the thing that makes that film really, really work. Like Jeff Goldblum in that film, he's a chaos mathematician who doesn't just come. He isn't just exposition. He is odd, he is creepy, he is funny, he says the strangest things, and you can understand the interrelationship between all of those characters in the best possible way. And Sam Neill, my earlier point about Spielberg being, you know, film school applied correctly, is the entire dilemma in Jurassic Park is Sam Neill isn't ready to be a father. You know, he's not sure if he's ready to be a father.
Okay.
And the whole crux of the film is he gets thrown into a situation where he has to look after kids. And that dilemma echoes this existential dilemma that Jurassic Park has, which is that can we go back in time and can we parent evolution? Are we capable of being gods to creatures that have had their time? And I think the film really interplays that really smartly. This film has none of that. Like, it tries to inject this divorce story, goes nowhere.
Doesn't matter.
There's a military corporatization story.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't work. There's a sort of terrible love story between Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard.
That doesn't work. And
doesn't
the only reason it remotely exists is basically a series of banter about how they went on one date and it didn't work.
The only thing that I think kind of works in this film, and I thought it was a good idea, was velociraptors being able to be trained. I think that was a new idea in the Jurassic Park universe.
Actually, it's kind of not, but trained, yes, communicate with, no, because in the third one they could blow through their skulls and talk to them. Remember that nonsense?
Oh, I don't even. The third one is definitely the weakest of the four.
I disagree. I think the second one is the weakest. I watched them all three, and I used to think the third one was the weakest, and I really enjoyed the third one, other than some nonsense.
I don't. Yeah, I have to admit, the second and third both are loose memories, but I remember the second having an amazing moment, which was an amazing Spielbergian tension moment,
right,
when the car that they're in flips over and someone is, I think it's Vince Vaughn or someone is lying on a piece of glass and it's slowly cracking. And I think that
over the cliff?
Yeah, over the cliff. And I think that's such an exceptional moment, but in an otherwise fairly average movie.
Hey, listen, they use gymnastics to fight off raptors, so...
Oh, wow, there you go.
We'll get into sort of...
But here's the thing, is that of the things that I've mentioned, you've kind of agreed that none of this works.
Right, and now this is sort of where it twists. It doesn't have to. And what I mean by that is you can still go to this and have a shit ton of fun. And the sad part is, because of its pedigree, and in name only, yes, executive producer Steven Spielberg, sure.
Yeah.
But like... This is not Jurassic Park. This is Jurassic World, and yes, it's the same franchise, but it doesn't matter. Like you can go and enjoy this film and not have it be the crazy meaningful experience that you had at Jurassic Park. And I know, whatever. And by the way, can we just rewind to the pretentious comment you said about the best special effects for these actors? No, they're just really good actors.
I think really good actors and really well written characters.
Sure.
So they
writing,
make
great directing. It's all a nice convergence.
Yeah. That's like Spielberg, for all his bravado with special effects, and he is amazing at visual effects. Probably the best in the world. For all his bravado with special effects, he knows how to put characters in those scenarios that make them work.
Yes,
and that's why those special effects work. It's because of the reverence that Alan Grant has for dinosaurs and how much he respects them, that when we see the Brontosaurus for the first time, we are in awe because we are in his eyes.
Right.
And that's what I think is beautiful. And then when Jeff Goldblum talks about chaos and chaos theory, that's one of my favorite scenes in that film. The water droplet on the hand. We understand what he's talking about and how it relates to the chaos that's going to ensue in the park.
Sure.
Everything Spielberg does with special effects has some human element to it that really makes it sing.
Right.
And I think Colin Trevorrow tries to do that in this film with a couple of the things that we mentioned, the divorce story, the love story, but none of that stuff lands in this film. None of it lands at all.
That almost feels like, to me, because it doesn't work, and I don't even think it was probably, who knows? Again, I'm making up who I think chose what, but like, what if, I imagine Spielberg's like, yeah, we should get into a little more about the family, or maybe we should do this, or maybe we should do that, and then they did little bits of it, but then they kept moving. Like, I don't think, I just feel like that was lost somewhere in the filmmaking by committee process that this whole thing most likely went through.
So I think what you're getting at is that, I readily say that this as well. Colin Trevorrow handles the spectacle pretty well.
Yeah.
Is that if you want to see dinosaurs beating the shit out of each other and eating people, by all means, spend your $15 on this film.
And if you want to see Chris Pratt be awesome,
Chris Pratt, I think is fun, and he's he as a movie star, he definitely has charisma and appeal, and I liked him from Parks and Recreation. And I think
Burt Macklin is on the case.
Oh man, if Burt Macklin was, if this was a comedy with Burt Macklin trying to rescue dinosaurs, I think that would have been hilarious. But I don't think even he can save the third act of this movie.
Well,
I don't. I think he gets lost in this.
Let's talk about Chris Pratt, and let's talk about he's obviously the shining star in this sort of.
He's
film
the new
for me.
Harrison Ford, I would say, right?
Yeah, but also I Harrison Ford and I, in my head, have an interesting relationship.
Yeah.
It starts with fan fiction. No, I've always liked him in movies. Obviously, Han Solo and everything, Indiana Jones, all that stuff, and everything he's done since then. Even Air Force One,
he's a likable screen presence.
But I don't think I would like him as a person. Like, the way it comes off to me is he's excellent at acting, and he's excellent at acting likable, but he comes off as kind of a dick.
Chris Pratt is the exact opposite of that. Chris Pratt seems like a guy you'd want to hang out with.
Right. And I think, and this might be a sort of, he might be the Harrison Ford of this age, because in this day and age, when everything is so interconnected and you're tweeting pictures from set and you're doing all this nonsense, but you're still interacting with your fan base on a very real level, if you don't have that sort of humanity aspect to you and you don't love what you do and love people that love what you do, I think that is that old style movie star of like, I'm awesome, I'm great at what I do. That's not a cocky statement. I just truly am. But I don't give a fuck about anyone seeing these pictures.
Yeah.
I think that's going to slowly die. And I think Chris Pratt is kind of blazing the trail of that, because he's the people's sort of movie star.
Yeah, and I think, there's even though his inflection as an actor is kind of like you can see that he doesn't necessarily take everything he does seriously. And there's because the character, you could argue, if you put Jason Statham in this role, which he could arguably play, he could, for what this character is supposed to do.
He would need a car.
But he could honestly play it as straight as possible, and he would be the aggressive action guy, and everyone would be like, oh my God, he's so awesome. But there's something about that Chris Pratt brings as an actor where he's got this like slight inflection of confusion when he says a line, it's slightly like, are you sure? Like he kind of rises.
It comes off to me as someone who's thinking of all the angles and not just like, I'm a fucking badass.
Yeah. And it's likable.
It's a human trait, because all these, and I love Jason Statham, and I love the fucking, the second and the third Expendables. I love the first one's a piece of shit.
But you know how Jason Statham doesn't necessarily have the ability, maybe we haven't seen it, to like not take himself serious. Like not.
Well, I think Spy, he does that.
Yeah, maybe not. Add the fun to this character.
I've never seen a Jason Statham character and been like, that's a person that could exist.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Chris Pratt, and now let's talk about, you talked about the moment where Alan Grant, where Sam the Man Neill saw the Brontosaurus for the first time. There's actually a sort of a perfect dichotomy scene in this film when Bryce Dallas Howard and Chris Pratt walk along and sort of are surveying, looking for the kids and surveying the destruction that their genetically modified dinosaur, the Indominus Rex, which we'll get to in a little bit, has laid waste to parts of the park. And there's a field very reminiscent of the original
field.
of the field where Alan Grant and Dr. Sattler saw the Brontosauruses. Of all of these Brontosauruses, or at least I thought they were similar style of dinosaur, just dead, where this Indominus Rex just killed them for sport. And there was a moment where I was a little distracted because something was going on, like actually in the theater with some people, but whatever. But that moment felt like it went on for a very long time, but not in a bad way. Like it felt like there was some reference, because you saw in Chris Pratt's sort of face and mannerisms and everything, and that's kind of a moment where Bryce Dallas Howard's character sort of turned on an emotional point, but you could really argue that was just coincidence. Chris Pratt just like is looking at these animals, because all throughout this movie he's just taken care of these animals and like really been like sort of their foster father, or in a sort of way, or like a caretaker.
He's the one person who has reverence for the animals.
Right. And you can see that he's really feels fucking awful, that like, oh fuck, like this is not like, it's emotional in the same, in sort of the opposite of the spectrum, where like reverence and joy of seeing these animals for the first time is something, and now the heartbreaking, realistic portion of like, oh fuck, like they made something else that's going to destroy all this.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the only real emotional moment. No, there's one other, but I'll get to it. But again, it's a Chris Pratt moment.
Yeah.
In the film.
I think that's a moment that is written a little better than most, but it didn't land for me. Like I didn't feel, because the idea, the underlying idea in that scene as well is that Bryce Dallas Howard's character, Claire, we don't even remember the name.
And his name was Owen. Chris Pratt's name was Owen.
is seeing seeing the human side, seeing like the real side of the park that she's been arguably running for a long time as well.
Running in heels. Oh,
well, we'll get to that. But to me, that scene doesn't work. It doesn't it doesn't land for me. I think it's a long scene. Again, I'm just going to go back to Jurassic Park for a moment as well. And when I talk about the best special effect, is like the reason I think that brontosaurus scene works so well is this little detail when Sam Neill's trying to pull off his sunglasses and he can't pull them off properly, and it's like they're falling apart in his hands. That's the reason. That to me is one of those wonderful moments that makes that scene work. And
of course.
That has nothing to do with Jurassic World, but I think it just reminds you of, things that happen. Because later in the film, everyone in this movie, starts doing stupid things or becomes an action hero. And none of them...
Or flip-flops between those.
Flip-flops between them.
Except for Chris Pratt.
Yeah, and none of them... Well, I think Chris Pratt becomes like the perfect action hero. Like even like slides into a car at some point while being chased by a dinosaur, and like perfectly lands and manages to hush everyone else. It's fine. It just does not a lot for me. And I think you agree as well. None of it really lands. Like I would argue the final battle between, big spoiler territory here, the Indominus Rex and the T-Rex is handled very well from a spectacle point of view.
Sure.
It's done very well. Like it doesn't have the problem of, a lot of action films where you can't see what's going on. It's set in the dark. You can actually see what's happening. There's a great... They do these long tracking shots which connect the humans to the dinosaurs, so you kind of always see where people are in spatial
things
relation.
like Godzilla sort of fail to do that.
Yeah, and Godzilla is actually a good analogous film to talk about as well.
I'm talking about the current Godzilla.
Yeah, current Godzilla. Yeah, but that's that being good doesn't make up for the fact that the film doesn't really work.
I think the film works fine. I think it wouldn't be under such a heavy microscope had it not had the name. And for instance, that last scene with this is something I struggle with as a filmmaker and as a film critiquer. But it's like it's awesome versus believability. And that's not to say that everything has to be believable, and not to say that everything sort of has to be awesome. But like, there's the scene at the end of the movie where, it's the cheesy little moment where the kid says something, and then Bryce Dallas Howard's like, "I got an idea," and then she has her Goldblum moment of luring the T-Rex out of his paddock to go fight the Indominus Rex. With the help of one of Chris Pratt's raptors to take down the Indominus Rex. Now, there's a moment that whole moment, while spectacularly awesome, and I do agree the action was cut together very well. I loved the scenes where you saw the people running and the shit going on in the background, and it seemed to balance it out very well. Like the dinosaurs are important and the people are important.
Yeah.
And even in those, like, we're running and it's a tracking shot and you see feet stomping around, nothing felt lost to me. I was like, there's our four characters. There are the dinosaurs over there, the raptors over there. Like, spatially I knew, and that's fucking hard.
It's hard to do, and I think it's in today's age where you can throw the camera almost anywhere, it's impressive to do that well.
And I gotta say, like, it's funny and I'll get into this sort of in a minute, but like, or what I was saying in a minute, but all of the action scenes in the movie, like, you if you've seen a lot of movies before, you can kind of tell how they're gonna end.
Yeah.
But each time, the reason I knew that they were so well crafted was I was kind of like, oh shit. Like I had a couple oh shit moments, but like then my higher brain functions hit me, and I'm like, well, I know this is going to happen, and that's going to be this. Like nothing surprised me, and that's fine. There was one surprise where the raptors. There's a surprise with the raptors when they're hunting the Indominus Rex at first, which I don't even want to spoil here. It was just really fun.
Yeah.
Back to the ending. So it was awesome. It was awesome looking. The final fight was awesome.
Yeah, it worked.
It made no sense.
As in why people would be fighting? Or
nope. As in why the T-Rex and the raptor would be working together.
Yeah, since they fought. Well,
and now, don't get me wrong. Like, there are... I'm going to talk about Transformers 4 for a second, which was a fucking turd of a movie.
Yeah.
But there's a scene in that film where Optimus Prime rides Grimlock, the dinosaur Transformer, and it was in the trailer, and it blew my stupid 8-year-old mind. There's a scene in this movie during that fight scene where the raptor's biting Indominus Rex. It throws it off, but it lands on the back of the T-Rex that's also attacking Indominus Rex, and the raptor like hangs on its back like it's riding the T-Rex and then leaps back onto Indominus Rex. Like, it was a tag team matchup that in this world that they built, however they built it, makes no fucking sense. So my struggle with that scene and the end of the movie in general was, at what point is something so awesome that you don't give a shit that it makes sense or not in the world the film has built? And that's something that I go back and forth with a lot. For whatever reason, I never got to the point where awesome outweighed my thinking that fight in my brain. So I would argue that didn't work for me.
Right.
Even though it was a really cool spectacle. But
so why do you want people to see this film?
because I think it's a lot better than a lot of the summer nonsense we're going to get. And I haven't seen everything yet, obviously, but like Mad Max is great. We all know that. We've talked about it a bunch.
If you had to choose between Mad Max and this, where would you go?
Oh, I'd see Mad Max.
Okay.
Yeah. But that, again, that's in a sort
of
a
world. If you had to choose
world.
between the Avengers Age of Ultron and this, where would you go?
I would go to Avengers.
Okay. And what are the other summer blockbusters so far this year?
There was, what the hell was there? There's not a whole lot.
It's early season.
Yeah,
we're about
but
to
like, I don't have a big belief in Fantastic Four. I don't truly think that Terminator Genesis is going to be the spiritual successor to Terminator 2, as some people have been paid to say. That's all speculation. Yeah. But I just think that there's fun to be had here, and in a summer where there's not a lot of things that people are excited about, or definitely not like other than Mad Max and Avengers, there's no real like super fun to be had that I can think of.
Yeah, I just if you're gonna spend your money, don't spend it here. Is my feeling about it.
If you can see a couple movies, see this movie. That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
There are definitely fucking awesome parts, and there's parts that made me sort of gasp and sit back, and it was a popcorn movie ride. It's not going to be something that, again, other than sort of debates because of this film's pedigree.
Yeah.
Like, there's not going to be much more discussion about it other than, man, it wasn't as good as Jurassic Park. Well, no shit, we knew that going in.
It's not going to be. Of course, it's not going to be as good as Jurassic Park. But then, arguably, nobody would say that Mad Max: Fury Road was going to be as good as the second Mad. No.
But I also think that there are people out there, and I don't agree with this, but I can't fault people for this, that think the original Mad Max is better than Mad Max: Fury Road.
Yeah, arguably, but I don't think those people think that Mad Max: Fury Road is a bad movie. And I think...
Right, I don't think this is a bad movie. You have to do a lot to make yourself a bad movie. This movie is not bad. Jurassic World is not bad. Jurassic World is good. Is Jurassic World great? No. Does it have great moments? Sure. Do they ever pay off or really make you feel like they're earned? Not really. So that knocks you back into good territory for me.
Right. That's a pretty low benchmark for what we should expect from filmmakers, given that,
What should we expect from filmmakers, Shahir?
Good movies is like what I would expect from filmmakers. Films that actually, like Mad Max: Fury Road, that give me that sense of wonder and like make my brain think and make me go, man, I want to see that again. That was really cool. Like to make the benchmark, just like a way to spend a few hours, like if you have time to kill, that to me is not a great benchmark for action filmmaking in general.
But let's put it this way. If you like movies, you're going to go see fun movies, right? So, like, why not? Because that's what they're there for. Like, as a piece of entertainment for 2 hours to take yourself out of your life and go have a good time, I would go see this movie. But like the idea that every film sort of has to be like, again, I think I sort of touched on this kind of on Entourage in a little bit. It doesn't have to be this giant statement. And this movie's problem is it wants to be considered as a statement, but that's only when you get above the sort of what the movie actually is and people like you and I start tearing it apart for little bits and pieces. That's when it falls apart. If you just take it for face value and like a fun, there's some dinosaurs running around and oh fuck, Chris Pratt has to take care of it and he has raptor friends and he's on a motorcycle. That's insane. Like that's where the fun is to be had. But the second that you do sort of what we're doing, which is what we do, it sort of takes a little bit of the magic out. Like,
I just don't think there was magic in them Thar Hills to begin with.
Not the same magic. Magic was the wrong word to use here.
There's to me, there's not enough here to say if you want to spend 2 hours of your time escaping from the world. Sure. And I think there's a lot of films that you could do that with. Mm-hmm. This is not one of them.
Yeah.
This is
disagree.
This is an acceptable film. it's not a mind-numbingly stupid film. Although, as I said, like the way I was thinking about it as I was watching it was like the island of increasingly stupid decisions.
Sure.
Everybody in this film makes increasingly idiotic decisions.
Except Chris Pratt.
Yeah, but even like the Richard Hammond stand-in character suddenly tries to like become an action hero.
But you know what though? I'll say this. What was that actor's name?
Irfan. He's an Indian actor.
He was great.
He's great in the film.
Irfan Khan?
Irfan Khan, who you might recognize from Slumdog, and he's been in a lot of movies. He is a terrific actor. But
you know what? I'm glad you brought him up because he was actually sort of believable for me. So here he is, this billionaire sort of funder person who believes in John Hammond's ideals and funded the park and wanted to make it open for whatever. He's the stand-in, like absolutely John Hammond, whatever.
Yeah.
But he's also, and they set this up. This is the idea where like the divorce story and the romance sort of fail in the movie. His whole arc and when he becomes stupid makes sense in the world that they built. He flies in on a helicopter and they have this whole moment, or they like to go out to another section of the park, and he's like this rich dude who now thinks he wants to fly helicopters because he's rich and he can fly his own helicopter. And people are worried about him doing it because it's like, well, he's not great at it.
That's fine, but then later in the film, basically the film suggests that they should put a machine gun on a helicopter and have a military raid on this particular dinosaur.
Sure.
And he decides to fly the helicopter with almost no. And I agree that it's set up in the world, but it makes no sense to me.
That is something his character would do. You don't think a rich billionaire who no one ever says no to would say, no, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to do it because I'm the goddamn best.
Okay, but in the case of a world-changing, chaotic situation...
It's not a world-changing thing. It's just his island.
It's just his island. You think dinosaurs being let loose in amongst 20,000 people is not a world-changing scenario?
And he wants to come across as a hero.
I don't think that part of it lands for me. Just as like the emotional resonance of this divorce story doesn't land and the love story between Chris Pratt, it's all set up. Like all that stuff is set up as writers would set them up, but they just don't land.
Well, the landing of this is he eventually fucks up and he bites it pretty. And
it just, I mean, it happens, but it didn't like make me go, oh man, you know, like
it kind of made me go, oh man. It kind of like when it crashes in the film. It lands into the pterodactyl aviary, and there's a really cool looking scene when it crashes. Cause I thought he would like live, and then maybe the Indominus would do whatever, but like it just crashes and explodes, and the Indominus roars, and I was just like, oh fuck, like.
And then you know, like right after that scene is a thing that happens in this movie that kind of drives me a little bit nuts in most big action movies, which is that. Terror is, like these pterodactyls are coming through and they're wreaking havoc.
Right.
And the film basically has our main characters walking through it as though nothing's ever going to happen to them. And they don't really seem that terrified by it. And it's like, and it just drives me nuts when a film doesn't convey like
they
the
seem
horror.
Terrifying.
Well, Bryce Dallas Howard jumps onto a car as pterodactyls are flying through
that was stupid.
And shouts out, "Where are you? Where are you?" And I'm like, "Oh my god!" And then like the kids like stop to like say, "Man, you're like Owen's a badass." Like who's that guy? As pterodactyls are still flying past them, and then we see like people being picked off by these pterodactyls, but these two kids who are the heroes of the movie just kind of wander through it like pretty coolly, pretty unscathed.
Sure. No, I absolutely agree.
And Godzilla did a little bit of that as well. And
Godzilla didn't give a shit about its human characters.
Yeah, Godzilla is probably worse at like the human characters than Jurassic World. Much worse. I cannot stress that enough. But this film has that, and it just kind of like that's another thing. It just doesn't land. Like the terror of these dinosaurs doesn't really land on the human characters.
I think it lands on the kids on occasion because the kids can scream and you're like, oh, kids are scared. Bryce Dallas Howard, let's talk about her for a second because we're already 3/4 the way through.
Yeah.
And we have a couple other things to do. Bryce Dallas Howard in this film, I'm a fan of hers. I like her work. I think she's a good actress. I enjoy things that she's in. But this movie, it's sort of...
By the way, I think the best thing she's been in is a Lars von Trier film that Mandalay, which I think is amazing, and she's amazing in it.
I mean, I loved her in Lady in the Water. I loved she was great. I just really like her. I like her. She's likable, and I think she can act. And hooray!
Yeah.
This movie, and I don't know.
Does her no favors.
It does her no favors, and it has to be a writing and directing choice because she can pull off stuff. Like, she's not stupid. She's not bad at her job.
The character is written to make increasingly stupid decisions.
The character is written as and again, I know we kind of keep going back to like feminism in a lot of this stuff, or sort of, and it's two dudes in a room. I mean, my cat's in the room and she's female, so maybe if she hears something she doesn't like, she can speak up. Yeah. It just, like, okay, here's your only woman character. I mean, main character. Yes, there's her sister. She's the aunt of these two kids, and she's all business and blah, 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 blah. And her arc has the same story arc as every romantic comedy ever. She's all business, and she's running the show, and she's got a sharp haircut and wears all white, and I'm in control. And then, oh no, things are going crazy. And what do we need? We need Chris Pratt to come take care of it. And no. Like, it's this weird sort of like, she falls apart so quickly. She has no actionable skills until the script needs her to. Paints her like a complete doofus. Doesn't give a shit about safety or people until she instantly does.
Well, until it becomes about, and this is that thing which a lot of like big summer tentpole releases do, which is that we don't care about people until it's the people that are the main characters.
Age of Ultron cared about people the entire way through.
They did a good job of that. I will give it.
But so she. And then there's this sort of thing, and I know you were bringing up the sort of high heels, running in high heels thing. She was getting some flack for that, or the movie was getting flack for that.
I think it's more that, I mean, that's a problem to me. It's just like this thing where I'm like, why are you running in high heels? And I know everyone's been talking about that, but it's more like the Masrani character that we were talking about, the Richard Hammond stand-in, which is that I don't think this person would be out there. You know, this is the CEO of Jurassic World. I don't think she would be out there.
Nope.
And the fact that the film puts her there makes no sense. You know?
And therefore her wardrobe makes no sense. Speaking of her wardrobe, whenever she decides to do something heroic, she just decides to change her outfit a little bit by removing some clothes.
Initially, she becomes sort of like dressed like Laura Dern.
Right. You mentioned that, and that's great. And when that's the first time, and reflecting back, I could see that, and I'd be like, oh, that's an interesting nod. That's great. And then every other time it happens 2 or 3 more times where she's like, then she loses the shirt, and then all of a sudden she's sweaty and glistening, and then like it's just like her running in high heels and a tank top with a T-Rex chasing her when she's doing her best Ian Malcolm impression. It's just, look, I know why you did it, Jurassic World. Like, she's a very attractive woman, and it's an awesome scene of a hot, kind of drenched girl running away from a dinosaur. Like, yes,
but it's
visually
also ridiculous.
But it's also ridiculous, and it takes your only female character and turns her into just this nonsense bullshit spectacle. She becomes basically another, and this is weird to say, but like, it's doing the exact same thing with a full human character that your dinosaurs are doing. In fact, I would say that Blue, the raptor, his name was Blue. There was Blue, Charlie, Echo, and Delta. For Chris Pratt's 4 raptors. Blue had more personality than Bryce Dallas Howard, than the kids.
They sit that raptor, who is a female, I think, up well.
Than Vincent D'Onofrio. Like, so when you develop a CGI character that deeply, I think they did a decent job doing it deeply for an animal.
Job. And
then you take an actual female human being and you take her from a baseline romantic comedy subplot and turn her into Baywatch running away from a dinosaur. That does nothing for your film, and it hurt it a lot for me. Now, again, again, we go back to Lizard Brain, where I'm like, oh, okay, for a second, and then you're like, no, this is fucking. You can make her sexy and powerful and cool and not do that, or do it differently in a way that it was earned, and she's not just a fucking bumbling idiot until she's an action star and hits a pterodactyl with the back of a rifle. Like, it did not land for me at all, and I feel bad for her because I like her and I want to see her do good stuff. But like, even in the trailers for this, I know you didn't see them. It kind of set her up for this, and it was exactly what I expected it to be.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, everything I'm hearing from you is not like, other than this is an okay distraction, is not saying that this is a worthwhile film to watch.
I think this, and we could go back and forth on this, but I think the initial difference, and as you listen to our wonderful podcast listeners, you will know why the only movie podcast, or the only podcast about movies, I should say, the only movie podcast ever only about movies only, is Shahir and I have a fundamental sort of different view on sort of the spectrum of what cinema can and should be.
I think it should be good.
I think it should be good, but our term, maybe we have a difference. We have a fundamental difference on what we think good is.
And I think good can be fun. And
this was fun.
And I think fun doesn't necessarily have to be stupid.
No, but this is fun that had stupid moments, that had great action, that had a main character, one of them that I really liked, that had a sort of bonding with animals experience with his raptors, which we'll talk about in a moment. That'll be sort of our final point. I think we're running very dangerously out of time. I just think that there is room for this film. I think if you like the sort of stuff that we're describing, I'm saying the positive things that we've described, then you will enjoy this movie. And you know what? Most people, I truly believe this, and this isn't saying that we're smart. I think we as friends and in this little film world that we sort of have, we nitpick films a fuck ton more than normal people do. And I think if a person that doesn't nitpick films went and saw this movie, they'd walk out and go, that was pretty cool.
Okay, but here's where I would land on that, is that if Jurassic Park and Jurassic World were playing side by side in 2 movie theaters, there is no way you would ever tell anyone to go see Jurassic World.
If they'd seen Jurassic Park before, I would.
Even if they'd seen Jurassic Park before, I would say you no way. If you were telling people to go see, like you had like a Taster's Choice test, and there was like Jurassic World on one side and Jurassic Park on the other side.
Well, Taster's Choice is a blindfolded test, so I don't know how that's going to work.
They might not be able to see the film. You will never tell them to go see Jurassic World.
I would say see Jurassic Park first and then go see Jurassic World. I would. There's no there's no question I would.
But then here's the point: is in 1992, people could go in for a distraction that was Jurassic Park, and it was amazing.
Sure,
and it was phenomenal, and it still holds up today.
Right.
Nobody's going to talk about Jurassic World within a year.
Sure.
Nobody's going to mention this.
It goes back
again.
to my thing. You don't have to. We already have that. We have that in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
So,
but Jurassic Park is fun without being stupid.
Sure. But we're not talking. We're not talking about Jurassic. But Jurassic Park is there, and it will always be there until the sun stops shining, and whatever.
And it will stay. It'll linger in our memory. I'm telling you now, if you have $15 to spend, you're going to be wasting it on Jurassic World.
I say you will not be wasting it if you enjoy just a fun time at the summer movies. Let's do one thing real quick. I'm going to stop down and listen to one of our movie reviewing sort of friends, Mr. Stephen Buja of Same Night movie review fame. He is in the woods working on some trails somewhere in the wilderness, and what better way to person to talk about Jurassic World than someone who's basically in a jungle? We're going to listen to
and
what
he's probably more qualified to see if you could run in high heels in a jungle than we are.
We'll have to ask him when he gets back, but let's see what he thought about Jurassic World.
Steve reporting to you from the woods in Huckleberry State Forest. Hope you're doing well. I just got back from Jurassic World. Say I have a fondness for the franchise, despite some lackluster entries, is an understatement. But even still, despite that, I still wasn't super excited about this movie. And I have to say, walking in with slightly diminished expectations, I was more than satisfied. They met the expectations and then some. This is a great time at the movies, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. Unlike some other franchises out this July, this one didn't feel the need to add any iconic lines. There was no clever girl or must go faster. It had a tasteful amount of nostalgia, and I actually liked how it's a very Spielbergian movie, obviously. And in fact, I kind of wished we had spent more time with the kids. I actually really liked the kid characters. And ideally, what I would love to see in a Jurassic Park film is a day in the life of a family that's on the edge of extinction itself. Parents are getting divorced, kids are, one kid's about to go away to college against the backdrop of extinct, but now very much alive animals. I think that would be actually kind of cool. It's thrilling, surprisingly so. There's an over-reliance on CG. I liked how in the original Jurassic Park, there was a real T-Rex there, and it was all animatronics and whatnot, but the CG was okay. I didn't see it in 3D, although here the 3D is pretty fantastic. It's a good time at the movies. It's nothing super spectacular, but it's surprisingly effective, and it does what it needs to do, and I really appreciated that.
So thank you, Steve. I have to agree that the way you described an idea about a family day at the park, and if the parents of these 2 kids were in the film,
right?
I think that actually sounds like a better film than this film.
Agreed. Like they don't really do that.
They don't really do that, and I don't think. And to me, these kids are not interesting enough to sustain that kind of dilemma without some other force. I just don't think it's there. I agree with you that it's the spectacle is handled well. The CGI is pretty good. I heard the 3D was not that good, and I would probably recommend not seeing the 3D from what I've heard. But, again, I would just have to disagree that it just, for both you and Steve, I think I kind of sound like the benchmark sounds pretty low for what's a good time at the theater for me. And I, I just don't think this is it.
I mean, you could word it that way, but I also think I'm less critical with my leisure time, I guess. That's not to say that like if I won't like slog through shit I don't like.
Yeah.
I just think I can enjoy when things are dumb. I can enjoy, and I can see your points, because this is something that we all do sort of care about. Like everyone growing up in our day and age, in our age group, like really cares about Jurassic Park, because it was just magical moments. There were lines around the theater, and like it was just this beautiful sort of time at the movies. And again, I can still enjoy this for what it is, which is a summer blockbuster in 2015. Just because I think. This is more of a compliment than a criticism, Shahir. I think you are in your head about movies much more than I am.
Right.
I think that's what makes you a good director. I think whatever, but like again, I'll go back to lizard brain. I can just go to that place when I need to, and I think you have a hard time doing that.
I maybe have a harder time doing that, but I think, and yes, I am very critical of films, but I think what I'm looking for in a film, is what Jurassic Park gave me, and not what Jurassic World gave me.
Right.
And I find it hard to say that we would ever talk about Jurassic World within 6 months. And maybe the benchmark for me is that if I would talk about this film again in 6 months, then that to me is money worth spending.
Okay.
And this to me is not that.
Fair enough. Real quick before we wrap things up, let's just give a shout out to I think Chris Pratt and his Raptors. I really like all that stuff. I think they handled sort of animal training in a believable way very well. And I really enjoy, I don't know. And I'm such a fucking sucker for like a boy and his dog nonsense. And that's kind of what this was. But with Raptors making it infinitely cooler.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, there was something I will, and this is sort of playing back to,
I was going to say as well, I tried to sort of put you in that position of like, if you had to choose between Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, I would say arguably then the other side of it is if you had to choose between Godzilla and Jurassic World, you would pick Jurassic World.
Every day of the week. I did not like the last Godzilla.
Oddly, I didn't hate Godzilla either.
What?
I think in Godzilla they got the monster right, but they got everything else wrong. And I liked the spectacle of Godzilla a little more than I liked the spectacle of Jurassic.
They got the monster right, but the monster's in the movie for 15 minutes. Therefore, by your own fruition about a film, that means that basically
15 minutes of the movie is okay.
Yeah. But and you like that better than what I would arguably say, even by your test, 50% of this movie is phenomenal, Jurassic World?
I think Godzilla does a more artful job of presenting its monster. And I think that scene, for example, the helidrop scene in Godzilla is probably more spectacle than anything in Jurassic World.
Oh, yuck. With their fucking cardboard nonsense people. Name me one character in that film.
Oh, I think they get the characters completely wrong in Godzilla.
But they spend 90% of the time on these humans you don't give a fuck about.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they do that very well. But for me, there's an artfulness and a certain joie de vivre, I don't know, about the way that Godzilla handles its spectacle, which is not to say that Jurassic World doesn't handle spectacle well. I just think that Godzilla, there's the director of Godzilla, whose name I've gone blank on, but he's an amazing visual effects guy, and showed a lot of promise with this film. Gareth Edwards. He showed a lot of promise with this film, Monster. Is a fairly artful user of special effects. But I still, I would still say, even though I kind of enjoyed the spectacle of Godzilla more than I did Jurassic World, I would say go see Jurassic World over Godzilla.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I'm just going to end us off. You threw me for a loop there. Now I was flustered, and then in the end you sort of explained it, and I'm back. So I will agree overall that the movie itself has a problem with its pedigree, and in the sense that we expect a certain level of greatness from a film labeled in the Jurassic Park pantheon. And I will say sort of this, much like the scientists in the film creating their genetically modified Indominus Rex, the film definitely does seem so preoccupied with whether or not that they never stop to think whether or not they should. And
it's amazing that the first film has a long sequence of asking that question. In a really smart way. Like, my favorite moments of Jurassic Park are them talking about the ideas of that film than the actual scenes themselves.
This film itself is, if Ian Malcolm was an actual person, is probably his nightmare.
Yeah.
But that does not mean that you can't get up, go to the movies, hang out with your friends, and watch some awesome dinosaur Chris Pratt. Just ridiculous fun action, I think, and that's sort of. I know you say, Shahir,
don't see the movie,
and I say go see the movie. So
here's what
you choose your favorite reviewer
and write into us and tell us. We are at our Gmail address is onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com.
Yes,
write in and tell us which way you're going to go based on what we said, and we'll give you 2 free AMC movie tickets,
which you could go use to see. Now, will you still? Here's the question, Shahir: will you still give them movie tickets if they decide to go see Jurassic World?
I'm never gonna begrudge someone for seeing what they see.
Okay,
I'm just gonna try and guide them gently one way or the other.
Okay, fair enough. Shahir, where else other than our lovely Gmail can people find you?
They can find me at my website, which has everything you want to know about me. www.shahirdaud.com. SHAHIRDAUD. I spell it out because it's a tough one.
Of course.
We have a Twitter account at OnlyMoviePod. Our Gmail, as I mentioned before, OnlyMoviePodcast@gmail. And we have a Facebook account. Look us up.
Okay, you can find me at www.matthewkroll.com. I spell it because there's a better comedian than me with 2 L's in his name. Also, you can find me on Instagram at Skeletor, 4 PREZ, or on Twitter at EmperorMSK. Yeah, guys, this has been the only podcast about Chris Pratt's dinosaur training summer camp, aka Jurassic World. Thank you, Stephen Buja, for your call-in from the woods, you crazy son of a bitch.
Maybe watching Jurassic World in the woods might be a worthy experience
in the woods. Anyway.